Terrific. Thank you, Vanessa. Let's return now to that growing budget deficit. The Agriculture Minister, Barnaby Joyce, joins us now from Tamworth. Mr Joyce, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Now, the ABC has learned the government will cut the foreign aid budget by more than $3 billion as it tries to wind back that deficit. Is foreign aid a bit of a soft target?
No, I think we would prefer not to have to do any of this, but the parlous financial position that we were left means that we have to do something. As you know, Michael, if we just continue on as per normal on the trajectory that the Labor Party left us on, then ultimately we'll get to a point where we won't have the money for the ABC, we won't have the money for pensions, we won't have the money to support hospitals, and so we've got to do something. And no matter what we do, people are going to be unhappy with. But we would have preferred not to have been left in this position, but we have been left in this position, and we've got to do something about the position we were left in.
How wide-ranging will the cuts be when the Treasurer steps up to announce the mid-year budget update?
But I'll leave that for the Treasurer, but what I can say is that we all understand that the honourable thing to do is to try to turn our financial position around, even if it hurts us, and we can see the polls, it is. We understand that. But we have two choices. We either do what is right and try and fix it up, even if it costs us our jobs in some instance, or we just do what a coward would do and just say, oh, let's stick our head in the sand and pretend it'll all go away. What really concerns me is that if this trajectory that we were on was to return, and that is the Labor Party got hold of it again, seeing they left us $300,000 million in debt, where on earth would we be by the time they had another crack at it? Where on earth would the nation be left? How on earth would we get ourselves out of that hole? We have to do something. We have to turn it around. And on the top of that, we do have a fall in iron ore prices and coal prices. And every time someone says to us, oh, well, mining's not important, we can live without coal mining, go have a look at what's happening to the budget right now by reason of the fall in those prices. Go have a look right now what's going to happen to the money that comes in, the tax revenue we collect that actually pays for the doctors, for the nurses, that we send to the states to pay for the policemen, that pays for the ABC, that pays for everything we think is so important, that pays for the aid budget. When those mining resources peel off, there's no money that comes into that spot to fill that hole. And we've got to deal with that on top of the fact that one of our big expenses now is just paying the interest on our debt.
As the Agriculture Minister, does it worry you that this tight budget might crimp your ability to offer more drought relief for those farmers in large parts of Queensland and northern New South Wales are doing it very, very tough at the moment?
Well, it does. I mean, I'll be factual, it does. We do the very best. We've got about 4,400 people now on farm household allowance. It means a couple gets about $900 to $1,000 a fortnight to support them in the basic needs of the house. We've got well over 400 people now getting concessional loans. I made another $100 million available at 3.21% on 10-year terms. I've been in negotiations with the bank. We've got a moratorium from the ANZ. We've got the CBA saying they've got no intentions whatsoever to take people off the place by reason of drought. We've got the other banks coming into line saying that they are going to act within conditions. We've got the pressure on them if they don't, that there are other alternatives we can take if they don't fall into line. We are doing everything that is within our power. But yes, it is restricted, like every budget's restricted, because we are having borrowed money. And it's borrowed money that we actually really have to repay. And we can't just keep going to the Chinese and keep going to the people in the Middle East and say, please hand Australia some more money because we can't manage our own financial affairs. And we're going, we're getting further and further into debt. That line only lasts for so long. Ultimately, 5, 10 or 15 years' time, we end up in so deeply enmeshed in debt that it completely restricts everything else that we're trying to do in this nation. And at that point in time, the Australian people will turn around, no matter who's in government, and say, how did you get us into this position? And we cannot, for our part, say, because of the time, we didn't have the courage to fix it.
Speaking of what banks have been doing to some farmers, Barnaby Joyce, the National Senate Whip Barry O'Sullivan, as you know, is wanting to move a private member's bill next year, making it illegal for any bank to foreclose on drought-stricken farmers. Would you support that move?
Well, I don't. I was a senator for 8 years, and I let the Senate do the Senate's job. What it does show is when people say, well, what alternatives do you have? Well, they're airing some alternatives now, and I'm no doubt that that bill will go to a Senate committee, as they all do, and it can be further fleshed out. I'll let the Senate follow its proper process. I'll do what's within my power. I will do as much as I possibly can right now. I'm doing that. We're making sure that we're dealing with the banks. We're making sure that we're getting concessional loans out. We're making sure that we've got the payments there so that people have a fundamental income stream into their house to support the dignity of their house. We understand the only thing that's going to fix it in the end is if the good Lord sends rain. And until such time as that happens, I'll just do the very best I can with the resources that I have.
In weekend papers, Queensland MP Robbie Katter, of course son of Bob, is quoted as saying that if you, Barnaby Joyce, are not willing to cross the floor over this, then you value your job in Cabinet more than the farmer's livelihood. What do you say to that comment?
Well, of course, Robbie would say that, and that's the game of politics. But I can explain two things. First, you've got to understand how politics works. This is in the Senate. I'm in the House of Representatives, so you're at the wrong location to start off with. But anyway, for the next step, it's so easy. It's so easy, Robbie, to throw rocks when you're not actually in the room. I could be a hero tomorrow, resign from Cabinet, go down to the coffee shop and give you a splendid dissertation of everything that's possibly wrong. Gosh, I could go out to the courtyard and, like the Greens, have a press conference every day and yell and scream and yak eye on, and you know what would happen? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I tell you where the fight is, Robbie. The fight is in the Cabinet room. The fight is in the party room. And when you decide to take yourself away from that area where the decision is actually made, you're what they call ineffectual. And we've got to make sure that we have effect. So I think the most irresponsible thing I could do is to do what it would be terribly easy and just say, well, it's too hot, so I'm going to get out of the kitchen and go stand in the courtyard and put some sunglasses on and a three-piece suit and have press conferences all day.
Does it frustrate you, though, as a senior National Cabinet member to lose battles in Cabinet coming up against the people who hold the purse strings, Matthias Cormann, Joe Hockey and the like?
Well, I've seen some of those reports, and to be honest, they're not factually correct. And I have to say that the idea that I've called my colleagues Cabinet and then a profanity is not correct. It's factually incorrect. It never happened. And the other thing that's kind of strange is that some of the people they nominate as not supporting us are actually big supporters of us. Joe Hockey went round Walgett, he went round Charleville, he went round Mitchell. Joe Hockey's actually had his shoulder to the wheel, and people haven't seen it. Joe Hockey's been on the phone to the major banks. So let's not start by dissing on Joe Hockey that he's not trying to help out here. He is. Some of the other ones are some of the biggest supporters. Malcolm Turnbull is actually one of the greatest supporters of trying to make sure that we look after people on the land. And so, but we all are stuck in this conjecture of having to deal with this problem with only borrowed money. When we look into our overdraft, when we look onto our nation's credit card, we've just got a massive debt.
Let's go now to those extraordinary comments yesterday by Queensland Liberal MP Warren Entsch, of course a former Liberal Party whip, in response to the Prime Minister's comments defending Peter Credlin on Friday. Warren Entsch was quoted in News Corp as saying, the Prime Minister needs to be very careful because there's a lot of Cabinet Ministers who have a problem with how the Prime Minister's office is operating. It is as bad as it's ever been. Barnaby Joyce, are you one of those Cabinet Ministers?
No, and I also say that the Australian people, the ones who are in the drought, the ones who are dealing with issues such as power prices, the ones who are dealing with things such as making sure that they keep their job and go into Christmas and have some money to put on the table so they can get their family through Christmas. I tell you what, the last thing they want to hear is about some internal squabble. They couldn't give a toss about it. What they want is us to continue on doing our job, and so I'm not going to sort of join in this sort of parade of silliness. We've got to make sure that we concentrate on one thing, which is the Australian people. I know that's what the Prime Minister is concentrating on. It's what I'm concentrating on. It's what Warren Truss is concentrating on. It's what Joe Hockey's doing his very best today to try and help in the long term, despite the pain it causes us electorally by trying to do the right thing. And this matinee and people contributing to this matinee, that is not what we want. We want to make sure we're focused on the main game. I'm absolutely certain that all the Prime Minister's staffers are doing the very best thing that they can for our nation. I'm sure that everybody else is doing it, and I think that's absolutely what the Australian people want us to be focused on, and that's what I'll be focusing on.
Okay, but what do you make of the Prime Minister's line that anybody who dares criticise his Chief of Staff, Peter Credlin, is sexist?
Well, I just want to stay away from that whole imbroglio. That is not the issue that people are talking.
Excuse me for interrupting, but you have to concede it's not a great look for the government, though, is it?
Well, look, it doesn't help anything in any political party if you start discussing yourselves rather than discussing the people you serve in the paper or on television. So I'm not going to be part of it. I'm happy to talk about the drought. I'm happy to talk about how we turn around the finances of the nation. What happens in the office and the squabbles that happen in the office, no one except those in the office are really interested in.
That's where we'll leave it there. Barnaby Joyce, the Agriculture Minister, thank you very much for your time from Tamworth this morning.
You're welcome.